welcome to Engaging the Supernatural, where we explore stories of how God is still moving today through signs, wonders, and miracles. When I'm able to bring a bunch of my friends into the studio, we like to sit down and have roundtable discussions, just go off the cuff. There's a plan, but there's not a plan. And so I'm excited to have you all meet my good friends, Troy and Leanna Brewer, with us all the way from Texas. Troy and Leanna, welcome to Engaging the Supernatural.
What's going on, brother? How are you?
I am good.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Troy.
It's good to meet
It's
you.
good to meet you.
Well, and I've had the pleasure of being on the journey with you guys for probably 5 years now, and I've gotten to, my wife asks you better questions than I do, actually, but I've been able to kind of pick apart different parts of your story, your journey, and I wanted to share that with our audience as we're filming this week. You guys have been on a unique path, rescuing children, having orphanages, all these crazy stuff that spanned really over 3 decades at this point. So somehow we're going to unpack that whole story in less than 30 minutes. But the place I'd love to start in terms of you for passion and drive, and when you guys come together, how that has resulted in everything that's going on right now. Like, where does that start? What are some of the things in your backstory that really give you the passion and drive for the work you're doing today?
Well, Leanna copies everything that I do. And
because you're so cool.
She's madly smitten with me.
Well, yeah.
And from the moment we met, she's chased me down and like, hey, I want to travel the world and form orphanages with you. That was her plan. Actually, you know what, man? We actually do work together very, very, very well. We actually enjoy being around each other. We love each other. We work together. We drive to work together. We sleep together. We eat together. We live life together, and we have for a long time. And it's been. She's a very good balance to me. We actually have a synergy between the two of us. You know, one can put 1,000 to flight, two can put 10,000 to flight, and that's a reality that happens between us.
Yeah, well, so the backstory for me, where my passion comes from, is my parents. My parents, we have five biological children. I'm one of them. But they were foster parents from the time before I was even born. So throughout my lifespan, they had taken in over 300 kids. Right. They adopted 12 of them. And so I have multiple brothers and sisters, and we all love each other.
All right, did you catch that? She has 300 foster brothers and sisters.
And your mom is still taking care of
She's still taking care of kids. Yes, because whenever they adopted, there were some kids that were never going to be able, they were handicapped. And so she adopted them, and they're grown-ups, but she still has them, and she will always have them until one of our siblings will have them after mom is gone. And we all made that choice together as a family that we would do that and support our parents in that. So that is where my passion began, was just at home. It's what I know. It's what I was taught. Mom and dad were really good about teaching us that love is a choice. You get to choose who you love. But they were very adamant about pointing us to Jesus and teaching us his ways and who he is and how to love like he does and how to see people the way he sees them. And one of the probably the greatest gifts that they gave us was they taught us to see the best in everyone. And you can find Jesus in everyone. They may not see it in them, but you can help them and you can love them through that. And so that's where my passion starts.
Yeah, I think, you know, like one of the very first dates that Leanna and I ever went out on was to feed homeless people. And so we were both teenagers, and we went to a place, and I was like, it was on East Lancaster Street in Fort Worth, Texas, and we took a bunch of food, put it in the back of the truck. Leanna handed out the food, and I played guitar and sang. And I was watching Leanna, and I was like, man, this is going to be a good team. This is going to be a good team right here. This is going to be awesome. She's never been mad at me for being crazy and wanting to do crazy things all over the world. And she's actually been worse than me, to tell you the truth. She loves people that nobody else loves. She sees people that nobody else sees. And it has just turned out to be really good. The Lord knew what he was doing when he put us together.
Well, I've just enjoyed being on the journey with you guys, hearing stories over dinner conversations and whatnot. I know you wanted to be a missionary, like that was in your heart. But you guys kind of haphazardly fell into the work you're doing today. What were some of the things you didn't know when you were starting out? Because you're going to other countries, people are showing up and you're doing things, but you literally just fell off the turnip truck and didn't know what you were doing.
Oh, yeah, no, we're still in way over our head. Exactly. You know, we're no experts at anything, but we're just very experienced. Now,
we definitely take that whole thing of walking by faith to heart.
Yep.
and living by every word that proceeds out of his mouth, because you can go in with the expectation of, oh, I know what I'm supposed to do. I know how I'm supposed to do it. And you get there. And if you do that, I mean, it's good to have plans, but you have to be flexible, because when the Holy Spirit shows up and says, no, that's really not how I want it done. I want it done like this. You can't be so stuck with your plans that you don't hear him speak. Otherwise, you've missed it. And so when we do these things, and from the very beginning, we've walked into what God has called us, and then we'd hear his voice and say, okay, this is how we're going to do it, because we had no expectations. We didn't even know what to do. We just heard him speak and say, go. And so we're kind of like Abraham. We're like, okay, where are we going? We don't know. How are we going to get there?
It's absolutely true.
All of those things. But that's how he did it. And that's how his journey began. And that's the way the Lord has done with us. He's like, you walk until I tell you to stop. And then I'll tell you to turn left or right. And I will present you with this child right here. And now what are you going to do with this child? What are you going to name it? Same thing with Adam. What are you going to name this? And what are you going to do with it? And are you going to take the responsibility of what I brought you?
A lot of times you'll just say yes to the Lord in some areas, Sean, and then when you engage in that field, what you find is the real ministry that God kept hidden from you, because you never would have signed up for it. You never, it's Jehovah Sneaky, right? The 17th Jehovah title, right? It's Jehovah Sneaky. It's like, come on, man. I didn't expect to find this in this field. But the kingdom of heaven is like a man who finds a treasure hidden in the field, and for the joy thereof, he sells what he has and he purchases it. So the Lord takes you through a process to where you're willing to sell out for the thing that was hidden in the field that you said yes to. Right. But you didn't know about that treasure. And because you never would have went looking for it. We've also found in doing a work all over the world, Leanna chasing orphans all over the world, which didn't even start off as that. Right. It started off with us feeding people, and then the feeding people turned into a food bank, and then the food bank turned into a food resource where we were able to take to other places, and then we got into Mexico. That led us to the trash dumps, and then we started finding kids and young families that were enslaved, owed the cartel money. We started working to pay off their debt to free them out of slavery. That sent us into missions. We ended up in Uganda 25 years ago. And found a little boy living. And again, I was just there to preach.
I was going to ask you to share that story next, so keep going.
Okay, is it all right?
Yeah, please.
So I was just there to preach, and wasn't going to do anything else but just preach. And we were in East Africa, and that was pretty crazy.
Yeah,
we were super young, and we're like, okay. And then this little boy came up to me. He actually pushed through. It was like a crusade. There was like 30,000 people there. Mm-hmm. And it was the biggest thing I had ever preached at the time. And really one of the top 10 numbers of groups of people I've ever preached to. And there was this crowd of people, and they couldn't get past the security. And this little boy busted out, and he came running up to me. And I saw him, and I saw that these guys that were chasing him were like going to beat him up, these security guards. And so I ran down the stairs and went and picked him up and brought him up. And he was a pretty big boy. I think he was like 9. Mm-hmm. And he was talking, but man, the music was so loud, I couldn't hear what he was saying. We were right by this giant PV speaker, right? And finally, I understood what he was saying. He was saying, "Sir, you must feed me." Right. Mm-hmm. And it's like, "Sir, you must feed me." Yeah. Think about Nicaragua. I'm Nicaragua, come and feed me, right?
Yeah. He said, "Sir, I'm hungry. You must feed me."
Yeah, "Sir, I'm hungry." And I said, well, okay, I just got through preaching, and you can go eat with Leanna and I. And that's kind of a common theme. If Leanna and I are on a date, or if Leanna and I are somewhere and God brings us some kid or some messed up person, we'll just say, just come go on a date with us. And that's what we do. And if I can stop and deviate and tell you how crazy that is, we were on a cruise one time, and we were walking down this cobblestone street in Veracruz, Mexico. Mm-hmm. And we came across this drunk. He was laying on his side, and tethered to him was this beautiful little 3-year-old, 2-year-old, 3-year-old girl. Filthy, filthy, filthy little girl in this filthy dress. And she literally had a thing around her ankle that was tethered to him. And whenever people would walk through that alley,
she would, a leash.
Yeah, it was a leash. Yeah. She would start dancing, and people would give her money. And Leanna saw that, and I saw that, and we were standing there looking, and the little girl was dancing, and that dude was asleep. And Leanna reached down, just untied her, and walked off with her. And I was like, man, dude, we're going to Mexican jail. And so we took her to the city fountain. And washed her.
We did.
And we hung out with her all day long. We went and bought her some clothes. We took her to go eat, and that little girl was starving to death. And that was anyway, we got lice so bad that when we got back on the boat, they quarantined us. And that was a big part of our romantic cruise was being quarantined with cooties.
And people ask us, what do we do with that little girl? Did we take her back? And we found the authorities and took her to the authorities. We don't know
because we couldn't get her back on the boat.
We couldn't take her back on the boat. Well, I wish we could.
But that's like a common thing for us, that while we're doing something, God will bring us somebody or something or some wild scenario. And he did that in Uganda, interrupted that. So we took Colin back to our room. First of all, we took him to the restaurant with us, and the pastors that were with us were outraged that we had brought an orphan child with us. And Colin had taken us to the place where he lived. Do you want to tell him about that?
Yeah. So Troy was happened to speak again, and I was keeping Colin with me so they didn't run him off. And I asked him, I said, just being ignorant, I had young kids at the time too. But to me, everybody has a mom and dad. I grew up with a foster home, so you have somebody that takes care of you. And I asked him, I said, Colin, where do you live? Where's your parents? He said, well, I don't have any. And I said, well, where do you live? And so he takes me in between these two buildings, and it's just a plot of dirt that he had swept so clean. And he had a couple of pieces of tattered clothes that he had folded really nice. And he said, I live right here.
He took such good care of his dirt was swept, and there wasn't any different colored dirt with his dirt. And he was so proud of how he took care of it. And that little boy lived, and if you asked him where do you live, and he said on the ground.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's like a common thing. We heard that in Sierra Leone a lot. Where do you live? On the ground. And so like, wow. So I'm sorry.
No, I mean, that's so I took him back and I told Troy, I said, dude, this little boy is an orphan. And on the way on that trip, the Lord had spoke to me and said, I want you to start an orphan ministry. And I was like, that can't be the Lord, because I don't know what that even means. I don't know how to do it. And I had told Troy about it. And Troy's like, well, God knows what he's talking about. You're just gonna have to trust him. And I said, well, God, if this is you, then you're gonna have to show me how to do it. Well, then he brought us Colin. And so I took him back to Troy and I said, well, Troy, this little boy is an orphan. Like, he's an orphan. And he said, okay, well, we'll take care of it. We'll take care of him. And so Troy got off the stage. We took him to dinner. And of course, the people we were with weren't happy. And they turned to us and they said, well, there's thousands of these kids. And Troy looked at him. He said, I don't know the 1,000. I know this one.
This is the only one I know. Is this one right here? And I'm taking care of this brother.
Yeah. And he said,
and that was a profound moment.
The Spirit of the Lord. Profound.
I'm not saying that was a smart thing for me to say. What I'm saying is the Spirit of God manifested between the two of us right then. And we knew we're called to this one kid. And we don't have to be worried about saving the millions of kids. Right. King Jesus brought us this one kid, and we're going to save this one kid. So we got him into a boarding school. Now, mind you, we were so broke at that time. Many times we did not even have electricity on at our house because there's no money in food bank ministry, and there's no money in prison ministry. And that was my full-time job, was food bank and prisons. And it's like, you pass a hat and you get back a cigarette, and that's about all you get back.
And I was working in my mom's daycare because we had 4 kids and we couldn't afford to put them in daycare and work. So we were doing both. And
so we made the commitment that we were going to pay Colin's bill and put him in a boarding school. Then we made another trip 6 months later, went back to Uganda, and we did not like the boarding school. We did not like how the kids were treated there. They were treated like orphans. And we didn't put Colin in this situation for him to be treated, like there's some form of caste system there. So that's what got us into the boarding school business and into the orphanage business and into this and into that. And now
there are thousands of kids.
Yeah, thousands of kids.
Well, I think one of my favorite stories, I've heard you share at different points in the time we've been friends. I was just highlights of this girl's journey. I think her name is it Travani from India.
Wow, you got a great name.
Yeah.
So she's a little girl. You found her when she was like 3, 4, and yet I think that's the thing that's so special about what you guys do. You were on the journey with these kids and now adults for multiple decades, seeing them through, get educated, get employed, get married. I'd love to have you just like unpack her story with a little bit of detail, because I feel like it fully illustrates the beautiful journey that you're on with these kids.
Well, I'll tell you what, not only will I tell you the story, I'll give you the pictures.
Awesome.
Okay.
We'll share them.
So here we go. So when Leanna and I first started going to India, and again, we were still in our 20s when we, I'm in my 50s now. I don't remember how old she is.
Thank you.
Oh, that was a close one.
Yes.
It's dangerous times. So anyway, we one of the things of the school that we were supporting and the ministry that we were working with is these kids just slept on the ground and slept on the floor. And we'd seen that with orphans before, but not to the degree of that.
So they had an orphanage there at the ministry that we were supporting. And so we supported the orphanage. And so what that meant is on one level of their building above their church was just a marble floor. And that's where all the kids slept. They all just slept on the floor, but they would feed them, and they were in a gated.
Yep. They were protected, and they were fed, and they were educated, but they didn't have anybody to back them. They had no beds.
Right.
They had no.
It wasn't a family. It was just they were protected. But then there were the kids that were below that group of kids. So they had these orphans, but then outside of that, on the concrete where it was their driveway is what it was, and there was gates. Where they, locked up their cars. Yeah. There was kids out there.
There was just street kids that would come in because it was a safe place.
Yeah,
all right. Sleep. But they were literal feral kids. Okay. Yeah. So they just lived wherever they could live, however they could. And I'm talking about some of them. I mean, here's a picture right here. And you can see how beautiful these kids are and these girls are, these little boys and these little girls that are actually just sleeping on the ground. Well, we'd get back at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, and we'd have to actually step over those kids to get to our room. And I'm just telling you, Leanna Brewer's not going to do that.
Can't do that.
So she'd say that one, that one, that one, that one. And we pick up all these kids and take them into our room. And because in our room, we had a bathroom, we had a bathtub, and Leanna would spend...
and lots of snacks.
And lots of snacks. And Leanna, because we always take a suitcase of our own food, and it's just American junk food is all that it is. And Leanna would give all these kids a bath. We would put new clothes on them, and then we'd end up staying up all night long as they went through. They never had an Oreo before. They never seen peanut butter before. They never seen a Hershey's Kiss before. They never seen any of these things before. And there would be 10 kids all piled up on our bed with Leanna just going through candy and talking. None of them spoke our language. We didn't speak their language, but they were clean. They had a place to stay. And anyway, Shravani was one of those kids. So we actually got her into the school. And years later, every time I would come there, she would always fight to the front. She wanted to sit on the front row. When it was singing time, she wanted to sing loud enough for me to hear her sing. When it was prophetic dance time, she always wanted to be up front and make sure that her Papa Troy always saw her. And she was just a little girl. And she wanted to carry my Bible and all those kinds of things. And I just loved her. And I would think all the way, every time I would be gone away from her, I'd be thinking about her the whole time. And I'd be praying about her. And she was just such a beautiful little girl.
And then, all of our natural kids have gone there.
Yes.
And so they all knew her. They all had a relationship with her too.
Yeah. So here's a picture of her and my daughter Megan together. And that's her. Here's another time in her life. And this is a picture of that's my son Ben. And that's her right there. Here's a picture where she's a little bit older, and this is really good. And she's like, she only spoke 2 English words. She said, "Daddy" and "shopping." That's it.
That's all she needed.
That's all
she's a typical girl. Yep. She was a typical teenage girl. And she owned me, and all of her friends owned me. And she was like a rock star in her village because she was like one of mine, right? And she knew it too, and I loved that. And so Leanna and I would take her shopping. We'd do all this, and then the day came. She graduated high school. And then whenever she finally graduated high school, and just such a beautiful girl. And then she graduated high school. We asked her, "What is your dream?" She wanted to go to stewardess school. She wanted to be a stewardess. And that comes back to a time whenever we were little, whenever she was little. And she asked me always through an interpreter, "Daddy, did you take a boat here?" And I said, No, I flew in the air. And she's like, "Tell me about that." So I would put chairs all up like it was an airplane. And I'd act like I was the pilot. And I'd make the girls walk around and serve everybody tea and things like that, And I'd say, "We're going through bumpy time, and we do this, and we do all that." And so she's like, "I want to do that when I grow up." And she did it. But in order for her to go to Stewardess Academy, she had to be able to speak fluent English. Right. And she really struggled in her English. And I can't even imagine. I can't speak any other language than Texan. right? And so I can't.
That,
you struggle in English too.
I do. But she did, man. She really struggled. But she got all the way through that and learned how to speak English, began to become fluent in speaking English.
She speaks it
Then she went to Stewardess Academy. She became a stewardess, right? And then Leanna and I was in Nepal. We were in Kathmandu, we were in Kathmandu, Nepal. And she knew about it. And she contacted us and said, it's easy for me to fly from India to Kathmandu. Can I come and speak with you? And we're like, absolutely, man. We'd love to see you. So she flies in and she meets with Leanna and I had never had a conversation with her. Not one time.
That's crazy that you were on the journey all these years.
25 years.
You always had to have an interpreter.
25 years. I had never spoken to her one time face to face. I start crying every time I think about this, man. We were in the bus coming from the airport, going back to the hotel, and she said, Daddy, I have so many things to say to you. And oh man, it was incredible. There was a lot of other people in the van who were not in the moment, and they were all talking about, I want to throw them all out. You know, all you guys, I need to talk to this little girl. And she just was like, do you remember when she had all these memories. Do you remember when I was 4 and you bought me this doll? And do you remember? And I didn't remember any of those things. And she would be like, you saved my life. And she's this far away from my face and she's this beautiful grown woman now. And she's like, you have no idea what you and Leanna have meant to me my whole entire life. And I was just worthless. And so we got back and here's a picture of she and I and Leanna on that day. And then about 2 years after that, man, she said, Father she calls me and we talk on WhatsApp all the time. She said, Daddy, it's time for me to get married, right? Because she's an Indian girl and her dad has to arrange a marriage for her. Yeah. And I'm like, oh, boys are all stupid. You need to stay away from boys. They're all knuckleheads. And I'm like, do you know somebody? And she said, yes, Daddy. And I was like, yeah. And do you want to marry this somebody? I was like, who is it? She says, John Mark. Now, we've known John Mark since he was a tiny little boy, too. He grew up in one of our homes, and we love John Mark. Yes. And they've always had good googly-moogly eyes for each other since they were little bitty. And I was like, well, let's talk about that. So make a long story short, we were able to set up her wedding, and we were able to support it and put together a super nice wedding for her. COVID happened then, so we weren't able to go to it, which was tragic for us. But she had a true.
It was beautiful.
This is her wedding picture, and I mean, just look at her. She's just absolutely stunningly beautiful. So,
and she has a younger sister and a younger brother that she was taking care of even when she was a little bitty.
Yeah.
And so we've been able to help them throughout their whole life too, and they've both gone through college and they're doing amazing. And she now has a home.
Yes,
she has a home and is married, and they're in ministry.
Yeah, they're
doing
youth
great.
Pastors.
Yeah, they're doing great.
That's the Servani story. She's one of thousands and thousands and thousands of kids that we've seen grow up from little bitty to now they have their own kids. And like we're about to be in Uganda. A big part of our trip is meeting all of our grandchildren that we've never met because of children now that we've raised and that they've had kids. I mean, they consider us the grandparents of these babies. And so that'll be a lot of fun.
It's the best.
I think that's one of my favorite stories, again, just because it spans so many years and it really shows what's possible if you'll rescue a kid when they're that small and just be on the journey with them. I mean, sometimes loving somebody well is a lifetime thing.
It is, and it is lifetime, and it's a commitment that you make, and that is something that I learned from my parents and my upbringing. Even to this day, the siblings that I grew up with, 50 years ago, we're still siblings.
You guys have epic Christmas parties.
We do, and we're having to make them in bigger places because now we all have kids and grandkids. But it's a choice that you make, and with these kids that we rescue, it's a choice that we've made. They're now family, and family for us is forever. So.
Well, we're almost out of time, but I just want to get into a little more of the scope of what you guys do across all of your ministries. It's not just rescuing children. It's not just orphanages. It's water wells. It's schools. It's building even literal villages.
Yes.
Just give us a little bit of overview of just all the many different things you have your hands in.
Well, yeah, you just touched on the main things. We save boys and girls out of sexual trafficking. We have ministries that shut down pornographic rings. We have rescue homes where once kids come out of pornography industries, we're talking about kids, little bitty kids, 1-year-olds, 2-year-olds, all the way up into, late teens and early 20s. We have those kinds of things. We have schools, we have homes. We also do water wells all over the world. We're doing a tremendous work in Ukraine right now. As you can imagine, we have 4 different fronts of ministries that we're working in Ukraine. Anything that we can do to serve, protect, and raise kids, anything we can do to be a fearless demonstration of freedom, redemption, and the goodness of God, anything that we can do to actually step in and help somebody in a very practical way that is supernaturally transformational. We build medical clinics. We have medical clinics all over the world. What else do we have?
We preach the gospel.
Yeah, we preach the gospel.
We do food outreaches as well in every nation that we're in.
Yeah, we have food banks. I really don't even know how many nations we have food banks in, but we have food banks everywhere, and we do that. But we try and activate people towards us and say, look, you don't have to be perfect. You don't even have to know what the heck you're doing. Just have a yes in your spirit and come go with us. We know what we want to accomplish, and you can be as involved as you want to be, or you can stay back, but you won't be able to stay back because the Lord is going to bring you a Colin. Right. God is going to bring you a Shravani. He's going to bring you one of these children, a Jimmy. He's going to bring you one of these kids, and you're going to come across this, and you're going to be like, I can never go back and be the same again. I had to spend the rest of my life in selfless service to King Jesus as demonstrated through the lives of other people. It's truly transformational.
Well, I think the last place I'd like to land is in terms of this sort of work. God's actually, and I think this is a weird left turn for you guys, calling you to do more here in the States. So you've been working all over the world, and all of a sudden the problems that need somebody to address here in the States are right in front of you. Tell us a little bit about that.
Go ahead.
Yeah, well, just in our local neighborhoods, in our public schools, in families here, addressing and confronting the issue of pornography that is destroying our families, is destroying our kids, is destroying our nation, and just making a stand against that, saying, no, there's no shame in the body of Christ, but there needs to be a real repentance. There needs to be, instead of hiding things like they've been hidden in church for so long, confronting those things and saying, okay, we're gonna get to the end of this. We're gonna get to the bottom of it. And our churches have to be healthy. Right. Our family has to be healthy. We've got to take care of our family if we're going to go reach the nations. We can't sacrifice what we have as a family to be able to go and reach out to everybody else, but we got to take care of our family first. And that's what we're doing. We're building on this generation and on the generation that is going, to mystic things or going to new age things and calling them back and saying, Jesus is real. He's here for you. He's the way, the truth, and the life, and bringing that back in a very tangible way.
Awesome. We're of course building Open Door Church.
Yes.
And that's another minor thing that we've done for 26 years as pastor Open Door Church. But we do want to make a specific stand against pornography and create an awareness of what pornography actually is. Because if you're watching pornography, you're watching a crime scene. Right. And people don't know that. And we know what the other end of that is. I'm a growing boy like anybody else. I'm just as susceptible to any of that. I'm sight motivated like any other man is. And I have to own the impact of what that actually is and accept the responsibility of there's no place in my life I can give to pornography. The reason why the whole world is being enslaved and the reason why children are vulnerable all over the world, what drives that is the whole world is addicted to pornography. And I'm not going to be afraid to talk about it and just go, hey, look, dude, I know you're a dude, but let me show you what this actual is. Let me show you this 2-year-old. Let me show you my little girl. Let me show you this little 6-year-old. Let me show you this. And let me tell you what happened. And let me tell you what people paid money to be a part of that. And they started off by just watching what people would consider normal pornography. Right. If the body of Jesus does not answer this, there's nobody else coming. We're the ones that have to do it.
And I know when people hear this sort of stuff, they're excited, they're overwhelmed. But in terms of finding out more, getting involved, sewing into what you guys are doing, where do we discover you on the web?
You can find us at troybrewer.com. So that's my name, Troy Brewer.
That's it.
And if you go to troybrewer.com, you can find me there, or you can go to sparkworldwide.com.
Org.
sparkworldwide.org, or troybrewer.com.
Well, Troy and Leanna, I appreciate you guys just sharing your story, the wonderful journey you've been on rescuing so many children. And thank you to those in the audience. We appreciate you being a part of this episode of Engaging the Supernatural. We'll see you again soon.